Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Not me. No way. Can't do it. Hold on. I gotta tighten my mic for some reason. It's feeling a little bit loose. But there we go. It's a minor complaint. Looseness of equipment is not a real complaint. Let me get this switched a little, get the angles good. Indeed, I got in at around 11 p.m. my time last night. So a little bit late, but we're good. Long travel. It's a 15-hour flight to Miami, and then I had a transfer there. So I left at around 5 in the morning from Abu Dhabi a couple days ago. I guess that would have been Wednesday, 5 in the morning. So that would have been your Tuesday night. I have a child waving next to me. They're missing me so much that they're going to try and sit in the room and be quiet while I do the show, right? And be quiet while I do it. That's her hand. There you go. She's having a good time. Okay, that's enough, little Cece. Beat it. Beat it. There you go. So
I'm fine with Lemon, but I still hate him. I'm fine with him. I'm fine with him walking on the earth.
He's dead.
But
You didn't even know he was sick, huh?
No.
Well, he's a mummy, remember?
What?
I showed you his mummy. He's mummified.
He's seriously just walking around now as a mummy?
No, he doesn't walk as a mummy. He just sits in a bed, lies in a bed. In Moscow.
Can he talk?
No, he's green. He's rotten.
What?
There you go. They wanted you to know that they hate Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. So, that's the kind of stuff you got to teach your kids, right? So, indeed, we got in late last night. And want to hear the best part? I forgot my gift bag in the taxi. So we're hoping the taxi comes back today. It's the second time I've done this in my life. And so not fun. I woke up this morning, where's my gifts for my children? And there was some nice baklava in the bag. There was a scarf I was using. Not too much stuff, just one toy each for the kids that I got them. A few other things I still have in the bag. So they didn't go empty-handed in my main luggage. But indeed, we got in late last night, so we were able to have internet for much of the flight, though, so we have some clue about what's going on in the world. And we were able to put a show together this morning. We'll see if we can go the full 2 hours. I am, of course, jet lagged. You get it one way, then you get it the back way. So right now, this is a bit of I'm not the same energy as I'd normally be in the morning because it's not really the morning to me anymore. It's some kind of late night thing at this point. I was there for 11 days, so you do get adjusted at a certain time. So there you go. But we can now confirm that the Sunrise Tech is operational in the same vicinity. We have consensus. That is a operational Sunrise technology, and Bitcoin is running. It is currently at 69,000. Can you believe it? 69,000 US trash tokens for 1 Bitcoin. Let me make sure that is the actual price because I was checking just before. You never know. It's crashing so hard these days that might change. Indeed, we are at 69,000 US trash tokens per Bitcoin. It's a steal at these prices. Come on, phone now. What's up? The phone is jammed for some reason. I have to restart it. So I still haven't figured out how to do the comments correctly with all of the beautiful Bampians in the Rumble channel. So we still are going with the old system here, which is a bit of a bummer. I should be able to figure it out soon, but I'm not quite sure what to do. So we're hoping that I can get the feed, the blah, 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 that would go there, blah, 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 so that I can see all of the chat live like we used to have. And I'm not quite sure why it's not working that way, but so be it. There you go. I had to reboot my entire phone because it froze. And then I'll get back to the chat with you all. 1 second. All right. What is it? We'll find out when the gift bag comes, okay? I'll tell you right away when it comes. They're very interested, obviously, in the forgotten gifts in the taxi. They're very curious about when Taxi Man's coming back. There we go. Adjusted. Not adjusted. There we are. Should be good. All right, I got to go back to Rumble and get you all on there. But indeed, we got the 69,000 US trash token Bitcoin, but an operational Sunrise technology. So we're pretty happy about that. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. There we go. Okay, my videos. Click on it. We got the chat. We got the chat happening. Good to see you all there. What are people saying? What are people saying? Good morning, gang. No matter how low Bitcoin goes relative to trash tokens, you will always be able to buy soap with it. Indeed, Soap Miner reaping all the benefits. Good morning, gang. CBFan says, I'm shameless. Indeed. Go and get your soap at Soap Miner right now. All you're going to be able to spend there, it's only doing the exchange with Bitcoin, the trading with Bitcoin. Jack2K says, good morning, Nolan and Great Awakening crew. Stay humble and stack those sweet, sweet sats, which are on an incredible sale today. Hellstew says, good morning, Rebels. Jack2K says, I hope you're back to 100% now. Soap Miner is being asked. I-Ching today, Sagane Sankon Sank says, 69 seems like a good number. Let's do an I-Ching later. That's a very good idea, Sagane Sankon Sank. If someone could think of the question in the meantime and put it in the chat, and I'll choose a question, and we'll do it later on the I-Ching site that we use. If the nation doesn't adopt it, it crashes down to 1 US trash token. I'm going to stack some serious soap. Why can't I quit you, Soap Miner? Such a deal, indeed. Pardon. 98% of the way, still get a little twinge depending on how it turns sometimes. Chef Zero says, look count fashionably late for his own gig, Barbados, where the living is tardy somewhat. Indeed. We are not on our normal schedule. And I also have my family here this morning for their last day in Barbados. So I was hanging out with them this morning. So there you go. My buy triggered at 69,420, John Cena 19. Amazing. Lucky you. Bitcoin Dem, good morning. Nolan, is Nolan going to be back on his island? I am on the island, indeed. Forget Gula Gula Island. This is Nolan Island, indeed. I'm flat mining in Naples and Marcos Island in Florida. We love it. Does anyone have a must-see/do recommendations? I'd say I'm not sure. I almost moved before there was any such thing as Barbados in my life. Before COVID and before all that, I thought deeply about moving to St. James Island, which is around Sanibel, because I wanted to live on Sanibel, but without living with a bunch of deracinated tourists, because St. James is like the not beachy, but excellent version of old Florida, and I would just take a boat to all the beautiful places. That was the plan. How could we have missed the Bitcoin Deb? It was right under your nose the whole time. Nolan Epstein. More. Nolan, you look so much more relaxed back in Barbados. I am, but I think you're getting a little bit of fatigue. Suntech, beaming bright. That little Epstein has his eyes. I knew it. I'm part of his genetic manipulation plans. I'm one of them. Professional photo bomber is what my daughter is being called right now. Are you a professional photo bomber? You have to stop, sweetie. I lose my train of thought when you do that, okay? Mandrick Baklava, indeed. Nice, Nolan. I got to use that excuse. I forgot your Valentine's gift in the taxi, honey. It's your actual body. Caught up to your residual self-image. I'm not sure exactly what that means, Chef Zero. Sale. 2021 all-time high, 69,000 US trash tokens just stacked Are you using the new Rumble Live Suite? Not today. I will try it, though. I'm buying the real dip. By the way, I just turned 69 on Tuesday. Congratulations, John C919. Amazing. Happy birthday. Give a mouse a cookie. And he asks for something more. Happy belated B-Day, John. Studio Live, things called Rumble Studio Suite. I'll try it out. I recommend hopping onto Amazon and rebuy dim. Yeah, kids never forget. I know they don't. I'll get the guy will come around. Was going to pay my property taxes. I'm going to buy Bitcoin instead, says Buy Banks. I'm in Marco, CamFam 1135 says. Thanks, Sloan, for the St. James Island suggestion. Yeah, it's a neat place. It's like, there's not beaches around, but like I said, you can take a boat very easily to Sanibel. It's right in the back. And the reason I thought about living in St. James Island is because it's a real place. It's not just tourists. There's fishermen. There's an actual fishery there. It's one of the last places where you get people actually living in Florida, not just having a house in a suburban style neighborhood. Not that I'm an anti-suburban guy, I'm not. But there aren't a lot of places in Florida that exist beyond the sort of beach to proximity to the beach lifestyle. And not a lot of them live like sort of Caribbean island style life. And not a lot of them live on that old pace of Florida. And so St. James is one of the ones that are like that, like Sanibel. It's a lot of old houses and people with real jobs. There's people who farm fruits there. And it's also known for its mushrooms. Something about the island allows it to grow tremendous supply of mushrooms. So it's got some agriculture there. And that's what drew me to it. It was like New England down in Florida. It was a small New England style town in Florida. So that's why my family and I thought about living there at one point. What should I do or see on Marco Island? Not sure. Supposed to feel like 30 below this weekend. Yay! Yeah, well, it's cold. I felt those cold temperatures in New York when I was there on my way, and that was a shock to me. It was like minus 20 Celsius, so I don't know, minus 10 Fahrenheit or something when I was there, but it shocked me. I wasn't used to it. And the wind and everything was a lot. Dubai was great. It was high 70s, usually low 80s, into the high 60s at night. Just perfect. Nice break from the weather I have here. It's nice to be in a little bit cooler. So there you go. Now that we're done with the weather, let's have a look at what the NPCs are hearing about. What's in the news for the NPCs? Let's check it out. Here we go, everyone. Tab, no, I want to do the window, and there we go. Sharing the audio. It should work. Like access to record your system audio. Wow. That's not what I wanted. Oh, I know why. Why do I always do that? Stop sharing. And now I got to share on this one, window. And it always denies me the thing. Got some problems with this Restream sometimes. There we go. Oh, guys, you're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. You know those really reliable and not flawed climate models? Guess what's screwing them? Guess. Flawed economic models mean climate crisis could crash a global economy. The global economy can crash, guys. Geez, those climate models had it just perfect. And then the economic model makers came around and screwed it up. States and financial bodies using modeling that ignores shocks from extreme weather and climate tipping points. It's because the economics modeler guys, they're wrong. They're wrong. The climate model's perfect. Perfect. They're just perfect. If it wasn't for those economists, everything would be fine. They'd be getting all of your money to fix stuff. Here's from Euro News. No, I'm not going to do that. We're not consenting with any of your stuff. Continue without. Bill Gates apologizes for every minute spent with Jeffrey Epstein denying email claims. Oh, cool. He apologized for every minute. Easy. Thanks, Euro News. Case closed. Just as all this huge global news is going on, and we're all trying to get our bearings with the Epstein files and the Bitcoin crash and the vault and the strategic minerals reserve and what's going on all around the world and Iran war and what's going on with Cuba and what's going on with Russia and Europe and censorship in Spain and all the things we're going to talk about today. But the New York Times had a really just hard-hitting article for a new winter coat. New York's mayor consulted his wife. Wow. Can you believe that a male asked for his wife's opinion on what to wear? As he dealt with a major snowstorm, Zoran Mamdani appeared in a personalized Carhartt jacket designed with help from the First Lady. Wow, that's great news, everybody. Great. People say that the fake news is useless. How else would we know, first of all, that Mamdani had a new coat? I mean, that in itself is news. Who, what, where, when, why. It was cold, right? And then he got a coat. But it's like, oh my God, I was sitting there saying he has a coat and it's winter. But who helped him buy that coat? Turns out it was his wife. It was his wife all along. Thank you, New York Times. Thank you. Excellent stuff. The murder of the Washington Post, according to The Atlantic. Today's layoffs are the latest attempt to kill what makes the paper special. It was such a special paper. And now it's being killed. It was murdered. Jeff Bezos is a newspaper murderer. He's a murderer. That's what we got. That's what's happening over there. Murdered it, right? That's what we got. Unbelievable. And then here's more on the Washington Post, right? This is, what are we going to do without the Washington Post? 4 years ago, we heard that Musk was summoning his engineers to Twitter headquarters as millions await the platform's collapse. Musk also announced new content moderation rules and a restoration of some accounts, but not Donald Trump's. That's what they said back in 2022. And what will we do without that, really great predictions? What will we do without all these journalists at the Washington Post? Look, Washington Post says 1/3 of its staff across all departments is being laid off. The Washington Post says 1/3 of its staff, not just the newsroom, is being laid off. Oh my goodness. How would we ever know what's happening at Twitter headquarters? What if they got the scoop on the winter jacket purchased by Mamdani? Imagine. Now they've laid off 1/3 of the staff. Why do you think the New York Times is getting the big scoops? How do you think they know about the great mystery of the winter jacket? Thank God. Oh, this is great news. Kamala HQ, everyone. We got some big news. Kamala HQ. What are the passwords? Headquarters. It worked. Today, we might hear that Kamala, way too online. The babysitter is weird. Project 2025 was real. Headquarters. There we go. Kamala's running. We want Kamala back. She's coming. Oh, this is great. Neighbors in Minnesota here have figured out something quite amazing. Anti-ICE activist describes roadblocks and traffic checkpoints they set up in Minneapolis. Here's what she came up with. These people who are protesting ICE, who are trying to guard the borders of America and create integrity in the immigration system, are literally creating a place that we know who's coming and going in and out of our own neighborhoods. Very good, Minnesotans. Excellent stuff. They're coming through big time. They've gone back to first principles and figured stuff out. Oh, these are great too. Just 1 second. Great news! The taxi just came back with the gifts for the children. I'm very happy about that. I knew he'd be back. I knew it. So indeed, if you go onto the legacy media and look at what happened here with the Epstein files, luckily they found Christopher Steele Do you remember who Christopher Steele is? Jeffrey Epstein, this is his advice, helped Russian spies. This is the guy who made the Russian P dossier, the famous Steele dossier that led to Russia, Russia, Russia. Who else would you want to quote from about Russia? Right? It's obvious. Epstein was a Russian operative. He's a Russian operative. That's what it is. You know, who also sets up checkpoints? The Taliban. Indeed. So we got Russia, Russia, Russia back. Indeed. Here we go. Here's his big take, right? His information and operational techniques were being used from that point onwards. Former head of MI6's Russia desk believes Jeffrey Epstein was recruited in the 1970s by Russian organized crime figures. Thank you, Christopher Steele. And finally, we get this one from the Telegraph in the UK. Diversity drive to make Britain's countryside less white. Gosh, they're so white. You know, I was in the British countryside and it's like, you know, you're in the city and it's like half-half. But then you go to the countryside and damn it, white people everywhere, infesting England, infesting Wales, infesting all of Scotland. Gross, 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 gross. So that's what we got over in that part of the world. Okay, everybody. That is the end of our NPC news for the day. Diversity is perversity. Crichton, apparently. Cretans, whatever. The zombies keep marching a step with absolutely mindless Cretans. So Cretans, by the way, if you didn't know, is a French word. And they had kind of a caste system in France. And the Cretans, and they still exist today. I can spot a Cretan face because we have a lot of them in Quebec. So I can spot a Cretan face from a mile away. And part of that genetic strain, I guess, made it to Quebec, and Quebec was very strict about marriage rules. And so in the old era, there weren't a lot of options. So what Cretans are around were not that sought after, I guess you could say, as marriage material, and they more or less peeled into the English community. So they often are Anglophones. Weirdly, the area that I'm from in Quebec has rampant and massive incest problems. Because not as much anymore, obviously, but the French Canadians had the strictest rules for marriage because they only had so much source population, and with such a limited source population, they needed to make sure there were no incestuous relationships in order to optimize the amount of people there, which is why the Quebec genetic database, because all marriages are very well tabulated and documented. Anyone in Quebec knows their entire 18, 19, 20 generation lineage. And so the huge lineage of the French Canadians is well documented. And as a result, it can be used as a very good control group for genetic testing and things like that, because it's the most coherent and well understood framework to understand genetics. Now, that's because the Catholic Church ran it. That was not the case with the English people in Quebec. They had no one looking after them. So they went into the mountains, and all the perverts went and hid there, and all the people who couldn't get none went there too. So the Cretans ended up there. And I can tell a Cretan from a mile away. It's pretty clear. And they all kind of look this, a lot of incest in them. So they kind of look the same. But we got a lot of those there. Cretans are those who use religion for their own personal gain. Yeah, but whatever the current term is, sure. But it goes back to a caste system in France, which really did exist. And I think still does. I think the Cretans are still a known factor in that part of the world. So there you go. So indeed, Bitcoin crashing big time, right? We got some major crashing Bitcoin, and the upshot of all of this is we've been here twice before. This reminds me, of course, of the March 2020 crash, as well as the November 2022 crash. And the November 2022 crash, of course, was the SBF story, and the March 2020 crash was the COVID market meltdown. So one was acutely Bitcoin in the case of, or crypto in the case of the 2022 crash. And the 2020 crash was the markets in general. What I see going on this time, we're going to get it all into it, but one of the things that's actually happening is crypto looks like it's more or less dying. And crypto's death is turning into trouble for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is trying to shed these markets. And for Bitcoin to shed crypto, there's some pain. So that's a part of what I see going on. But I think you can see the correlations to all the other things going on as well with silver and gold and these other things. But nevertheless, the Bitcoin peer-to-peer network, all that stuff always has this great advantage, which is we don't get stressed about stuff like this, and we are able to weather these storms due to conviction and in particular the inability of us to be embarrassed by Bitcoin going down. We've all been through this before, and that's one of our superpowers. I know Scott Adams used to talk often about how being immune to embarrassment was a superpower. And Bitcoiners like us have been through this stuff before. We've been written off multiple times, of course. I always can tell whenever anyone, when you say, oh, I work in Bitcoin, and then people say, oh, that's still going on, you know you're in a bear market. And that's always used by people to kind of insult Bitcoin and insult Bitcoiners for their contrarian take. So VJ here talks about stealing against this, being strong against this kind of demoralization. He says the hardest part of Bitcoin for bear markets, for those who haven't experienced them before, is the creeping doubt you may feel. Everyone around you may think you're a fool, friends, family, the media. You may start to believe them. When in doubt, remember that the fundamental reasons why Bitcoin is valuable have not changed. If you need to strengthen your convictions, simply revisit these fundamental reasons and realize why the market is not always rational, but eventually it will be. Well, VJ is completely correct, right? We are not living in a rational world. We're living in a world war situation. That world war is economic and psychological. We knew this world war was economic and psychological at both of those instances that happened before, the March 2020 crash and the November 2022 crash. Both of those were intense, targeted economic and psychological warfare moments. Very big highlights of the World War III situation that we're in. Now, I have kept the frame of World War III being from the beginning of the financial crisis. And with all of these Epstein files, one of the biggest revelations of the Epstein files was just how integrated he was into the crash, and just how much the crash did also change his own plans and who he was aligned with and what they were doing in alignment. Indeed, the reason why Bitcoin comes out in that period, many people believe, is because it looked like it was the only way to save the system. The system had put itself onto a terminal doom loop, and there were only so many ways out of that doom loop. So we'll see today that we're just further along those lines, that the 0809 crash set in motion events that had once created Bitcoin, but also put us on track to be in this World War III psychological and economic war that we find ourselves in. So as we move forward, the battle lines of the economic and psychological war that is World War III continue to become more obvious. You saw them very clearly during the March 2020 crash. And then when it was targeted against our industry after the SPF crash, it was very obvious. Don't forget the bank run that happened, Silicon Valley Bank and all these other places that really took the brunt and showed that there was prejudice in the system and an attack vector, because it was the banking connections and the liquidity connections that attached to crypto that were attacked. And that's why from then on, we really knew we were a main player in World War III. And that's how I was able to predict very easily that Trump was going to head to Bitcoin, because at that time, if you added up the exact type of warfare that was going on, and remember they debanked Trump at the same time, I said it's only natural for these folks to come together now, the MAGA folks and the Bitcoiners, simply because we have a very similar enemy who continues to attack our own worldview. And so when you think of those attacks and you think of what's been going on, just like Pierre Rochard writes here, I'm seeing a lot less gloating from the anti-Bitcoin commentary at this time around. Here's why. They know we're keeping receipts. They know we'll have to face the screenshots. They know the gloating won't age well. They've been through this several times now, and that is becoming more and more obvious, because this crash looks different than the 2020 crash or the 2022 crash. It now looks like Bitcoin is the effort to suppress it is being abandoned. It looks more and more like we're seeing an effort to accumulate. It looks like we're seeing more and more an effort to go out and manipulate the markets in order to get Bitcoin. And we'll have a look at that in a second. So just as I was saying, the market crashed during COVID, and nobody even remembers that unless they panic sold. 2022 is similar. Those were the two crashes I was just mentioning. Will be the same said of 2026. Unless you manage a hedge fund, it's unhealthy to follow the stock market or even log in. Gives exaggerated importance to short-term fluctuations. Indeed, Bitcoiners have this ability to think long-term, and conviction is exactly what is rewarded in these times, simply because we have understood for a long time, and that's what we've been covering here on this show from the very beginning, the psychological and economic war that we're in. And so you can see some of this manipulation here. Here's Alexander Esser with a really great take. Bitcoin and MicroStrategy, something very big is upon us. My spidey senses are all over. Since October 10th, there is a non-stop fight. Remember, that is the part of crypto, and I think we're seeing this separation, this bifurcation clearly of crypto and Bitcoin. This is not organic and is completely astroturf. I've been in the space now for 6 years. I have never witnessed the amount of crazy we are witnessing right now. The October 10th liquidations, whale selling after 15 months at 100,000 US trash tokens, but not before. JPM, hit pieces, quantum, generational metals run, leaving out Bitcoin. Now Jeffrey Epstein as the Bitcoin inventor. There's not a single day of pause for Bitcoin. The big money wants in cheap. They really can't explain this any other way. Bullish beyond belief. When we jump to 250,000 US trash tokens in an instant. So I'm also lucky if you saw all of these Epstein revelations. So I think the Epstein revelations that are interesting are what he was thinking and doing during the financial crisis and in the immediate aftermath of that financial crisis. But of course, all these stories, and they're always the same goddamn story. You know how many times we've been through the Joey Ito story? You know how many times we've been through the MIT Media Lab and all these other small revelations that we just found about the new dump, about Bitcoin Foundation, and all the rest of it don't really add up. I had the lucky association with Bruce Fenton, who was around for all of this. So Bruce Fenton and I, of course, were just in Dubai together at the Satoshi Roundtable. And Bruce Fenton, of course, is the host. He was also the fellow leading the Bitcoin Foundation back then and was one of the guys making sure that core devs were getting paid and that there was some financial structure behind it. And so here's Bruce Fenton, who I had, like I said, the good fortune of talking about all of this stuff when it was going on. And I still haven't seen anything really new. I don't really know what's already been proven, but I've had enough private conversations with MIT Media Lab people over the years, and I've known Bruce for a long time. So I've seen a lot of this up front, and I've had these conversations before. So within the old Bitcoiners, we've always understood exactly where the Epsteins and all those people came in and just exactly how far their influence lasted. And of course, I don't need to prove to you guys who come from this world of, we got the smartest audience in, maybe the world here at this point because of the amount of stuff we've been talking about and the amount of predictions we've gotten right. So you guys have heard a lot of this stuff before, and you guys have been following all of this manipulation, and of course understand how the open source project, the decentralized nature of Bitcoin, understand how the architecture of Bitcoin can't be manipulated and can't be manipulated by anyone from some inside baseball point of view. Anyone who's around for the block wars remembers exactly how resilient Bitcoin is to both subtle and overt manipulation. So here, Bruce Fenton underlining the time of events, start in chronological order from the bottom. So this is the note that everyone was talking about here. This is the Joey Ito, Jeffrey Epstein stuff. Now remember, Joey Ito quit the MIT Media Lab in 2019 because of this stuff. And I even have closer associations because ending Joey Ito in the MIT Media Lab and CoinDesk used to do a lot of stuff together. They used to write articles in CoinDesk. They always invited us to their events. We always had this back and forth. we had someone on our board who was exactly from the MIT Media Lab. His name was Michael Casey. He was a very good friend with Joey Ito, and he ended up becoming the editor-in-chief or the editor-at-large or the head chief content officer. He had some executive title, and I worked with him for years. I knew all of these connections, and everyone knew it. But these were not hugely influential people. He did a bit of writing in CoinDesk, but he had no effect on the deep work going on in Bitcoin. He had no effect on how core devs operated. He might have had a bit of access to chat with them, but he certainly had no influence over them. So here's Bruce breaking it all down. Joey Ito of MIT Media Lab is sending an email to donors saying the MIT has hired 3 Bitcoin developers who used to be employed by the Bitcoin Foundation. This org was later run by me when I was a volunteer executive director, and I contributed to the foundation and development. The email is forwarded here to Epstein and appears to be something sent to many donors. Indeed, almost all the things I've seen over the years. Remember, Jeremy Rubin was caught up in the last tranche of emails. Another guy, Jeremy Rubin, I've known him for a long time. One of the gentlest, nicest fellas you're ever going to meet. Nothing to do with Epstein. And Jeremy Rubin was more or less just sending the same kind of emails I send to people all the time, trying to get money for this. I have an idea. You want to get funding. You want to go see it. As a matter of fact, guys, just so you know, I make a point systemically. I make a point to ask one person for money every day for an idea that I have. I ask one person every day. That's part of my system. I say, okay, after the show, I will literally, if I don't know what's going on and I haven't had an idea come to me in the day, I will sit down and make one up. I will come up with someone who I should get in touch with, who might be able to fund one of the ideas I have in my head. And because you never know, part of your day has to go towards building something and planting a seed that you might be able to harvest in a few months. So I do that every day. At the end of the day, when I don't have anything that pressing as far as write an email, I got to get back to this guy, I got to talk to that guy. As long as you're done your operational things, the actual stuff that's producing results now, once I'm done that, I always take a minute for the thing that I might do next. Now, my batting average on that is very low, but that's by design. I'm not trying to hit 1,000. If I hit 200 on these notes, that's great. If I hit 200 where I say, I want to go here, I want to do that, I want to do this, and it's usually someone who I think will benefit from this idea, I'll write them and I'll say, hey. Now, I don't even get it done every day, but it is my system to have something that might change the world, some random idea that I had, and to try and move it forward by asking someone for money or support or another connection or a connection to someone who has the money to pay for the idea that I have. So I try to do that every day, at least once. And it's usually stuff that's all involved in all this World War III stuff we've been in. Of course, I'm all about creating messages, narratives, media, and that's the way this psychological war works. And so I've been heavily involved in it for a long time. That's how I had all these moonshots, like getting RFK and all these people in the early days, because you just take a chance, right? You just say, oh, okay. That's what inevitably led to us getting Trump. It's all of these little random chances that we took, all these little emails we send 2 years before the fact. I created a relationship with Scott Pressler, for example. Before, when he was just volunteering, he's the guy who does the get out the vote stuff. So when Laura Trump took over the Republican Party, she hired Scott Pressler immediately. I was already talking with Scott Pressler before he had an official position with the Republican Party. So that was in like February or March 2024. And wouldn't you know it, it didn't take long for all of those people to get closer to Trump because they re-architected the whole party structure under his daughter-in-law. And so that's how these things work. You just compound little attempts to get lucky to fulfill your vision of where things are going. And so it's an important thing I do, I think, for myself personally, in order to get this kind of traction and to help manifest the different ideas that I have and different things I want to see happen. So when I see letters like this that Jeremy Rubin or others had sent to people like Epstein, I'm telling you, these are copy-paste letters. I send more, there's 4 or 5 things I'm always trying to get funded or advanced that can change the world. And it's more or less the same email. I modify it so it doesn't come across like bot stuff. Of course, I don't want to have a appearance that I'm just spamming people with copy paste letters, so I tailor them and personalize them. But in general, I do this multiple times a week, and so just understand this is a normal thing. I'm not the only one, right? I'm not sure everyone does it my way, but I do it instead of one-off Herculean efforts to email a bunch of people to get one idea funded. I've got 4 or 5 ideas, and I'll try to reach out to people pretty regularly to help advance them. So let's go back with what we heard from Bruce Fenton. The most concerning line to many is that Ito says MIT can take control of the developers. In context, it seems clear he was talking about taking over the funding / having those developers on staff. He mentions that there was a vacuum created that allowed them to step in. Indeed, the Bitcoin Foundation started to have a lot of trouble at this time, and it was all just typical Bitcoiners fighting about influence. So Bitcoiners have been sensitive to this from the very beginning. If someone reads this as Ito saying MIT controls the developers simply because they are paying them, then this wouldn't jive with their contracts or economic reality. It's also very unlikely the developers would let MIT violate their agreement by controlling them, especially to the point of attempting to control code or influence Bitcoin. It's more likely Ito was taking control of funding / a PR win by having his group come over. 2, Ito forwards this message, FYI, used gift funds to underwrite, explaining that the funding for his developers was from gifts, also presumably thanking donors who donated to the overall MIT Media Lab and later the Digital Currency Initiative. Epstein replied, Gavin is clever. Hard to speculate what is meant by that. Gavin, the most well-known of the 3 developers at the time, and is mentioned earlier in Ito's thread. My guess is that he's saying Gavin was clever to take the deal MIT offered. Notable, A, Epstein didn't seem to know about this deal or be involved with it. Ito seems to be informing him after the fact. I read this as a, hey, look at the good things we're doing. This is key to the narrative that Epstein was seeking to control or influence Bitcoin. If he did, then either Ito was writing a fake email informing him of something he already knew, or he became interested in the influence after the fact. Neither of these seem likely. B, if we assume worst case scenario, 1, Ito was making a fake email telling Epstein something he already knew, and they conspired to try to control the devs. 2, the devs did not fight this or go public, and all 3 went along with it. And 3, they added some sort of bad code / pro-Epstein code to Bitcoin, with this chain of events is unlikely. Then we should ask, what was the code? The network is transparent, and anyone can see code changes, and they are not accepted to the Bitcoin network unless nodes and miners accept them. The other possibility is that this was an effort to limit on-chain scaling to push Lightning. This wouldn't quite jive with these devs and what they did. It is possible, but would have required MIT taking an active interest in this and pushing it. Maybe they did, but we don't see evidence of that. MIT has many challenges, pro-CBDC, Gensler, and even dealing with Epstein in the first place. If they worked to try to influence Bitcoin development, we'd have a lot more information and a solid thesis on how they influenced it and how, indeed. And this was happening, I guess, back in 2015. So already 6 years late to the game. Now, this was a very boring time in Bitcoin. This was a market low back then. There was all kinds of civil wars. We were just getting to the block, to the scaling wars at the time. So I don't think any of these guys won the scaling wars. Look at who they funded. They all lost the scaling wars. Gavin completely got wiped out by the scaling wars because he fell for the Craig Wright magic trick on stage. So the influence of whoever they're talking about here was just about zero after this. Now, Lightning as a potential Trojan horse to subvert Bitcoin also doesn't really make sense, because Lightning has been developed by all kinds of independent people for a long time, and it seems to be working. It seems like people have figured out how to scale Lightning for certain things. We've learned things that don't work. We've learned things that do work. But at this point, it looks like most people have understood the functionality and the dexterity and the applicability of it. So I can't imagine this is going to go anywhere. Indeed, here we see the more interesting news about where his influence and effect really was. And I think this is the biggest revelation that I've seen. Now, all the sex and stuff is, yeah, sure. Very interesting, right? And I'm not trying to downplay it in terms of the criminality, the depravity, the Satanism, all of the pizza stuff looks totally real. Now, it shouldn't be any surprise to us. We've been treating that as more or less real for a long time. With the way Trump handled Epstein from the beginning, I told you that we were seeing kayfabe, and we were seeing Trump induce people's curiosity and interest to lure them into thinking about it and talking about it. I think that frame still applies. I think Trump is trying to squeeze a little more out of that at the moment. He's trying to go out and let people continue to get interested and wonder. So I continue to believe that the bigger story here is this stuff which we didn't know, and that is his ties to, we could guess this stuff, but seeing it clearly in writing, the note where Epstein says that he was a Rothschild representative and that he had funding from Rothschild that he mentioned to Peter Thiel, I think all of that is much more revelatory in that it's new, right? I think the other stuff we could have guessed. I think that the way Trump handled it was always a wink, wink, nod, nod. Yeah, this stuff's really bad. And so, continue to think about it and be concerned about it. But seeing in these notes here that he's coming right out admitting, here's the Libya stuff, right? Also have friends formerly with MI6 and Mossad willing to have their identity as stolen assets and recovered. And interestingly, we're seeing the references to the Rothschilds disappear in the search engines. So I think that's also a sign. And that's what really this is about. This is about the financial systems, and seeing his connection to these financial systems is, I think, the biggest story. PDB here underlining as well. I just did some research on Bitcoin wallet sizes and pace of buying and selling. I told AI to make me a chart quickly to share here. The normies are selling and enjoying their profits or scared, while the whales are buying. Enjoy, he says. And that's exactly what it looks like to me. It looks like we're at a point now where Bitcoin is, with this crash, just like Bitcoin was involved in center stage in the market crash in 2020, with COVID, just like Bitcoin was center stage in the 2022 crash. This looks like the opening for Bitcoin to once again be center stage. Now, I believed for a long time that 2025 was not going to be the year for Bitcoin, simply because Trump had a bunch of other enemies to fight, a bunch of other battles to rage. The subordination of the Federal Reserve was the big one, and he wasn't going to get control of the Federal Reserve in time. And so because the Federal Reserve was going to continue to try and run things, it was going to be sideways, sideways, sideways for Bitcoin. I didn't anticipate the amount of market rigging and manipulation that we're seeing, but that looks like what we're seeing. It looks like we're seeing people try to accumulate at smaller prices. Now, go back to Epstein's connections with the financial system. Fisher King has a really good take here. He says, I listened to the leaked Bannon interview with Epstein. Clearly, this was footage that Epstein wanted to use to rehabilitate his character, to present himself as a smart guy who tried to advance science. He demonstrated no deep understanding of financial markets, which Bannon suggested numerous times. When pressed, he just said it's a system like the human body and no one understands it. He fell back on that metaphor over and over. People understand markets much better than he did. I would like to know exactly where his money came from, why Wexner gave him the townhouse in New York City. There is sketchy stuff here, but this man is not some genius. It's hard to build a deep conspiracy theory on him unless you assume that he was playing dumb as part of the conspiracy with Bannon, and I don't see it. What I see is someone who had a skill set. World War III began with the financial crisis, and so he had to operate on the new battlefield, which was purely economic, purely Wall Street driven. And so he was indeed trying to catch up and trying to get there. Now, Promethean Action said more or less the same thing. I'm going to play it for you because I got to go get my charger. And so I'm going to play some of this audio for you guys. I have to get my charger because I didn't realize how low on battery I am. So I'm going to play a bit of this and I'll be right back. 1 second. Let me know if the audio is coming.
Thanks to the latest Epstein dump, we now know who the banker's inside man is.
Let me know if that stuff comes. He's not Satoshi. Don't worry about that. No way, guys. Just more. They tried the Epstein invented Bitcoin 6 months ago. Yeah. And the most energy literate. We'll talk about the energy literacy in a second. I just want to make sure that you guys heard that audio before audio good now.
Britain was during and after the.
Let me just see if the audio works. Good, it works. Okay, I'm going to be playing the audio. Just give me 1 minute and I'll be back with my charger.
The 2008 financial crash. Here's the most important snippet from the latest document dump. It's about Lord Peter Mandelson, and here's how Jeffrey Epstein describes him. Well, for all intents and purposes, PD is now acting deputy prime minister. What was Jeffrey Epstein, who was in jail when that was written, and Lord Peter Mandelson doing in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash? Remember, these discussions are going on while the bankers are being bailed out and the global financier elite are being saved. But instead of that story, here's what you're being inundated with. Now, if you read the TDS-infected press like The Guardian, you'll see headlines like, Trump news at a glance, Epstein files release shows emails with Trump officials, past and present. Or on the other side of the political spectrum, Fox News focuses on new Epstein documents include photos of Bill Clinton, shirtless in hot tub, socializing with Michael Jackson. Or if you want to go hardcore British psyops, The Telegraph says Epstein's links to Putin and Kremlin spies raise fears he was a Russian agent. Now, here's what they don't want you to think about. The 2008 financial crisis was never really solved. The banks got bailed out at the expense of the American taxpayers and the economy. And now Donald Trump is finally taking down that criminal free trade system of the global bankers. On the very same day these new Mandelson revelations came out, Donald Trump was busy dismantling what is left of that old world order with dramatic new economic moves, including the creation of a strategic critical minerals reserve. Now, if you think this is a coincidence, you haven't been paying attention. And most important, it's not about sex and blackmail. I'm Susan Kokinda, and for months, I've been telling you that the big reveal in the Epstein files was about Peter Mandelson and how it had more to do with the 2008 financial collapse and the banker's empire than it did plane trips to an island. So if you want to get above the noise and get the deeper story, hit the like, share.
Indeed. When you think about the circumstances in which Epstein was forced to operate after the financial crisis, you can understand exactly why we are in the position we're in. Epstein was getting tips from Lord Mandelson. He was getting bailout tips, just like we all in Bitcoin got tips when it came to the use of the Genesis block. That was a tip. Right? The chancellor on the brink of second bailout of the banks. We were going for systemic change, and the actual belligerence of World War III went off the mark right there. They went off the start line. And that's why I've been saying that these globalists are the all lies, and that the participants in World War III, the belligerents in World War III, continue to be the belligerents that I've said were the belligerents from the beginning. You remember the whiteboard that I made? This one here continues to apply. So one of the reasons why I always bring back these whiteboards the way I do is because they are continuing to be relevant and they continue to explain what's going on. You know, I just heard them describe von der Leyen. If you hear how Promethean Action, Susan Kokinda pronounces her name, von der Leyen, right? The all lies. So we can see from that 08 crisis, the axis where you had Russia and China actually go away from the all lies. They double crossed them. They did something different. They went off on their own. And they went off on their own in that they didn't buy into the global warming end of the world hysteria, which was a way to supplant and further inculcate the entire British banking system into the backbone of the entire world order. And so when you saw the energy consumption and energy production of China go through the roof after the 08 crisis, in the wizard world, in the wizard war world that we're all like muggles trying to decipher, the way I interpret that now is the Chinese basically saying, okay, this doesn't look like it's going to work, and we're not going to let you guys continue to run us. We're going to subtly try something new, which is to go crazy on energy and produce tremendous amounts of electricity. That's why they do have a strategy to win the world again, but that's not compatible with this old British banking system, the Lord Mandelson system you heard from Promethean Action right there. So the belligerents, the reason I tied these up is because these three parties into the equation is because this is what ends up manifesting as World War III today. The economic and psychological war began then and has continued to roll into the circumstances we see now. Now, the ables, right, the people who were in early Bitcoin, the people that Bruce Fenton is talking about, people like Bruce Fenton, people like the ones I was with at the Satoshi Roundtable this weekend, myself included, have been fighting this World War III along these lines for many years. I gave up on politics. I gave up on US political system being capable of solving the problem because I saw the Canadian one firsthand. While all this is going on, I'm working for Stephen Harper, and I can see in Canada at the executive level, we're toast. And even today, you saw Stephen Harper come out and say in the news, oh, Canada should sacrifice everything for its sovereignty. It should sacrifice everything for its sovereignty. What a brain dead way to describe what Canada should do. Because he had his portrait day yesterday, a public hanging, not the cut public hanging we all would like to see, but he had a public hanging yesterday for his portrait. His official portrait came out. And so he gave a speech. It's the only time anyone ever wanted to hear from this guy in the past, I don't know how many years. And because you never hear about him anymore because he was too boring and stupid. And he spent all his time thinking the news would treat him fairly if he was able to just be a good, honest guy. And, obviously it was crazy. So I'd given up on politics until I saw Trump. And Trump, I really categorize more as part of the ables. We're dealing with someone whose skills are just so much better than anyone else, so much more powerful at persuasion, so much more capable of fighting against the entire architecture of deceit, that you got to count him on the ables side. And so that whole battleground, the whole battlefield of the ables being better people really kicks off at that point when all of this is going on. And that's why you see Epstein and these folks trying to make friends with people who had a say in all of these systems at that time and who knew when the bailouts were coming because the war was turning into a financial one. And that's why Balaji here says, I've never been more bullish on crypto because the rules-based order is collapsing and the code-based order is rising. So the short-term price doesn't matter. As international law breaks down, we will need not just on-chain currencies, but on-chain companies. As the post-war order breaks down, we'll similarly need the post-internet order. States will fail and the network will take their place. Oh, now it says I'm not charging, which I don't quite understand why. Okay, give me one more second. It says I'm not charging. We need to unmute, right? That always helps. So I was just saying what Wisteria said. He wanted his tentacles and everything. And yeah, he did. And especially when all of this financial manipulation became the most important subject. So what Balaji is saying here, that the need for more of these ables is now obvious, and that the battlefront is very clear. And the good news is we have the ables. Do we have the ables? That's why I was very bearish on Bitcoin in 2025, in the sense that now, if Trump was able to wrestle control of the Federal Reserve earlier, we would have had much more change quicker. But there's a timeline to this. So again, go back to what I said at the inauguration of Donald Trump, which I did from PubKey on the Bitcoin Magazine broadcast. And I've said consistently here with all of you guys almost every morning since January 2025. I've said it in many podcast appearances. I've said it in, basically anytime someone asks me what's going on in the world, my answer is always this. We're watching the subordination of the Federal Reserve to the Treasury as the constitutional republic first oriented the system. The American system was civilian control of the military, civilian control of the Treasury, and not opaque cartels or industrial military complexes. So the real story of the Trump presidency is the end of the all lies that presented it as some kind of democracy, but of course was nothing of the sort, and the reinstitution of accountability and of the civilian control over these important levers, both military and the markets. And by markets, I don't mean that there's really, still a free market, but that the driving force should be directly connected to the executive branch, and that the Hamiltonian system of government, which was really where this stuff starts, we can really start to understand now with Lord Palmerston and Lord Mandelson, all of these lords in the UK. We can see now that the American system and the American Revolution shocked them. They wanted their empire in the UK, and the only way to do it with what they saw, with the way they saw America emerge and the American system emerge of American style colonialism, which is build, build, build. And when you saw that system, there was only one way to control for them, which was to create division, create the both sides funded catastrophes that happened with the Napoleonic Wars. They won the Napoleonic Wars using this system. Then they crystallized this system, and you see them use it all the way up to the U.S. Civil War. Of course, Abraham Lincoln was able to counter them, but they eventually did get control of America using this system, using this financial system. The 2008 financial crisis was a weakening of their capacity to manage and control America. And now, from what I predicted for the whole year, that the U.S. system, the Treasury subordinating the Federal Reserve, was the biggest story in town. Now, the good news is we have one of the best ables on our team that I've seen in a long time. I'm putting him up into the level of Musk and others that are doing so much to underline that it's the ables against the systems, the people with the properly aligned souls, the properly aligned intellectual outlook, the people with the properly aligned networks are able to continue to push forward and win at a pace that, just think of how much it's changed from the beginning to now. So Besson had a great time yesterday testifying, lots of highlights that shows exactly why he's in the ables category. So I'll play a couple of these for you.
Increase in over a decade, and we are well above 50 now.
Has it been mostly above 50 since April 2025?
Again, long and variable lead times in manufacturing that you may represent.
Let me ask it differently.
Financial center, not
since April 2025, for how many months has the PMI been below 50?
Where are we now?
I'll give you January went up. But what about April to December? It was below 50 for 9 consecutive months.
Where are we now?
So the score is 9-1. 9 months of manufacturing contraction versus 1 month of expansion.
I look forward to seeing you next year.
So one of the stated policy objectives,
and we'll keep score.
Yeah,
okay?
one of the stated policy objectives of the Trump tariffs is to bring back domestic production. Does the Trump administration regret imposing tariffs on goods that cannot be produced domestically at scale in the United States? Do you realize in hindsight that that was foolish?
Do you realize that we use the leverage to bring down tariffs from other countries to take down non-tariff barriers?
Tariffs on bananas give you leverage?
Yes, with Colombia, with Brazil. Okay. I think, Congressman, you're being very naive with negotiating strategy.
We were promised reindustrialization. A tariff on bananas did not lead to domestic banana production. It simply made bananas more expensive for American businesses and consumers. The same is true of coffee.
Countries negotiating in a more fulsome manner.
Are you willing to commit to no longer imposing tariffs on any product that has neither a domestic substitute nor a national security rationale?
That would be the definition of foolish in a negotiation.
So you're willing to impose tariffs that make more expensive goods that we cannot domestically produce here in the United States,
Again,
and that have no national, what is the national security nexus of bananas and coffee?
Again, why would you do that? That there are numerous things when you negotiate with Indonesia. There are things that are only made in Indonesia, but the Indonesians brought down their tariff barriers, their non-tariff barriers.
I get it. We have to make bananas great again. I get it. Thank you.
So Richie Torres didn't quite land the punches he was hoping, but here's some real punches getting landed by Bessent. He was great yesterday. Here's more fun stuff.
Serious question and a serious issue for the financial services industry, especially as the Secretary of the Treasury. Well, that's an important. No, this is my time. I haven't asked you any more questions. I haven't asked you any more questions,
It's the gentleman from Massachusetts.
I'm trying to get to my next question.
Could you speak a little louder? I can't hear you.
Okay, I might.
Yeah, is this good one too? We've got more good ones.
Appropriated funds. Treasury will be.
Is this going to be a yes or no?
Program
Mr. Secretary. No. I'm going to abide by the chairman's rules, but I have some rules. You can say yes or no. And then if you say you may continue to give that support. If it's a no, then you tell me why. And we need to be clear. Yes, let's start the yes or no. I'm trying to be respectful, but you're not going to do what you want to do on my time. Yes or no, or you can say I'm not going to answer it. Now move on.
Number 3.
Okay, so let the record show that he refuses to answer a question. No. We're not going to do that. We are not going to.
So Besson was on fire yesterday. He had a good one against Maxine Waters too. Now go back to this idea of systemic change and what we're seeing. So not only did we see Bessent yesterday really go and show this subordination up front, right? We see the Treasury taking control of the economic engine and really lighting the fire inside of the economic engine. So it's not just extraction, so that it's actual production. We've said this for a long time, that the way that the belligerents in this war are going to win is indeed harnessing the energy story. So Canada, right, this frame, you don't have to hallucinate anything. This frame that we've been talking about fits. Carney's from that world. Yesterday, America created something called VOLT, the Strategic Minerals Reserve. So the Strategic Minerals Reserve, I guess, went live yesterday. Canada decided not to sign, and just shows you on what side of the ledger that Mark Carney is on, and definitely not about making Canada richer. Now, here's Elon Musk talking about exactly where we're headed in this golden age and exactly why the Ables are winning and exactly why we're going to head to this golden age of energy and American-style colonialism. We're going to colonize space. In order to colonize space, we got to colonize the North. We got to practice these techniques. I wrote a science fiction book about this 10 years ago. Wrote a science fiction book about colonizing the North, using Bitcoin, using citadels, using the networks that Bitcoiners are building, because this is the only way forward. It's to rebuild, build anew, embrace the old form of colonialism, which is just build. It's not create division and economic extraction. It's about actually just building, and that the people go build actually have good lives in the place that they build. That's the American system. That's the Hamiltonian system. I saw Tommy in the comments saying, isn't it funny that they made Hamilton all gay and stupid when the musical came out? I think that's very funny indeed. I agree. It's hilarious. Hamilton, who really did help architect a counter to the British model. Here, Elon Musk talking about 30 months left, and what he's talking about here is space mining.
It's harder to scale on the ground than it is to scale in space. Any given solar panels can do about 5 times more power in space than on the ground. So it's actually much cheaper to do in space. My prediction is that it will be by far the cheapest place to put AI will be space in 36 months less, maybe 30 months.
36 months?
Less than 36 months. You can mark my words. In 36 months, probably close to 30 months, the most economically compelling place to put AI will be space, and it will get like ridiculously better to be in space. You know, once you start thinking in terms of what percentage of the sun's power are you harnessing, you have to go to space. You can't scale very, very much on Earth.
But by very much, to be clear, you're talking like a lot.
Yeah. All of the United States currently uses only half a terawatt of power on average.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, if you say a terawatt, that would be twice as much electricity as the United States currently consumes. So that's quite a lot. And can you imagine building that many data centers, or that many power plants? It's like those who have like lived in software land don't realize that they're about to have a hard lesson in hardware, that it's actually very difficult to build power plants. And then you just need power plants, you need all of the electrical equipment, you need the electrical transformers to run the transformers. Have you tried to do an interconnected with the utility at scale, like with a lot of power?
As a professional podcaster, I can say that I'm not, in fact.
Yeah.
Can't you solve this with your own behind-the-meter power stuff?
You can build power plants.
Yeah.
That's what we did at XAI. But
Yeah.
plus, let's do it.
Why isn't this a generalized solution?
It's very difficult to scale other forms of power. You can scale potentially solar. Solar cells are already very cheap. I think like solar cells in China are around like 25, 30 cents a watt or something.
Again, go back to this idea of the Chinese system defecting from this financial empire that was crashing in the '08 meltdown. And you can see energy was the key. Energy was the insubordination. Energy was the betrayal. And where we were able as Bitcoiners to be incubated by China and these systems because they had the cheap energy. They went crazy on energy, and you had all of this stuff start to get created and built. And now so much of it was repatriated to America, thank God. But what we saw from this whole era, from China rebelling really against the system and making a run for it, right? They're still going for it. I think there's always a natural adversarial nature. They're going to go for it, and good for them, go for it. But they're not going to get there simply because once America solves this energy problem, there'll be no stopping us. And that's where the Bitcoin comes in, because of course, Bitcoin is an innovation in energy finance. How do you pay for all this energy? You need the anchor tenant model. That's where all of the AI comes in. But of course, AI needs load balancing. So every AI data center, I've told you for well over a year, that whenever you hear AI data center, you have to include Bitcoin, because you can't just have an AI data center. You need to balance the load. And Bitcoin fits so naturally into every AI data center. And don't forget, we gave them about a 10-year head start in teaching them how to do co-location and teaching the industry. Bitcoin was one of the first ways that the data center models were monetized. They weren't just this, what Elon is saying here, this backup for the software they were selling, which is mostly how Amazon saw it, which is mostly how a lot of the other Googles of the world saw it. That's why Bitcoin already had more compute power harnessed and behind it and pushing it forward in 2015 than Google, way more. Already in 2015, it was impossible for Google, if it took all of its compute power, all the electricity it used, it still was incapable of attacking Bitcoin at that hash rate. And so because we were able to harness so much power and turn it into compute, we were able to really create the economic models that AI is simply absorbing and using right now. So we've already plowed the way. We've already gone ahead and created the economic relationships that AI is relying on in order to push forward. That's why Bitcoin and AI are joined at the hip, and why they'll continue to be joined at the hip, and why the energy revolution is really one that benefits Bitcoin and the separation of money and state, the separation of it from this empire, because we are the natural psychological mark, the index for the price of energy. That's why Roxham exists in the way it does, because we believe that's the formula. Here's Canada on life support, and the country is in recession. And why, with this financial crisis that we're seeing, the financial crash that we're seeing in the past couple of days, why winning this financial crisis and turning this into opportunity and wealth for people is the solution to winning, because no one's going to buy all of their bullshit about cutting your dick off and going trans if they're poor. No one's going to buy recycling if they're poor. Poverty, because no one's logical. as we've said before, the Epstein files and the way Trump used kayfabe in order to induce people's interest worked, right? You know, the fake fight that he had with Elon, and then, oh, Trump's in the Epstein files. And then what happens? Everyone starts asking for the Epstein files. It was pure wrestling kayfabe. If you don't understand wrestling, you have no business talking about politics right now. Weirdly, if you didn't watch Hulk Hogan, if you didn't watch Triple H, if you didn't watch The Rock, if you didn't watch The Undertaker, for God's sake, obviously fake, but everyone knew that and still got involved in the storyline. That is kayfabe. Heels and baby faces and archetypes. The archetypes are important. You know, there's a video going around right now on the archetypes of the jester, and I didn't bring it up today because it was more relevant to the Grammys. But the jesters have always been a mocking version of a king in order to show you what the king is really like. So when you see these jesters like Trevor Noah joking about pizza and joking about little boys and this and that, and when you see Chrissy Teigen, who is in the shot, are joking about going to jail for all the stuff that she said on the internet because it involved young people. She said she's going to jail for pizza, for God's sakes, right? So we've heard all of this stuff before. And so the jester, the archetype of the jester, not to be confused with the trickster. The trickster and the jester are not the same thing. The jester is someone who deliberately is mocked in order to, in some ways, hide the true nature of the crown. It's an inversion of the king. And so you use Hollywood as jesters in order to plow the road, in order to really tell the truth, right, about what kings and all these other failures are up to right now. All these other compromised folks are up to. Now, the trickster is the archetype that Bitcoiners embraced from the very beginning, and the trickster is the shapeshifter. The trickster is not a jester. The trickster is there to change the world, to shift the nature of the world. Someone like Elon Musk can be called a trickster in many ways, in the jokes he portrays, in his use of AI. If you saw yesterday, this huge merger between XAI and SpaceX, I guess. I don't know. It's huge. It's like the biggest merger in the history of something, blah, blah, blah. And you see what tools he's given you. The tools of the AI that he's sharing are tools that empower folks to be tricksters, to tell stories, to mock. And that is much more powerful than logic. Much more powerful than reason. Nobody's logical. Nobody's reasonable. People need to be hypnotized. And they've been hypnotized for so long that there are only so many ways to break the hypnosis. Trump did it with Epstein by inducing all this interest. And we are seeing it now with this economic crash. It's part of how you wake people up out of their the foggy morass that they're in. And here's the strategic stockpile, the Project Vault, which reported financing of around $12 billion involving major loan structure and private participation from industrial users. This Vault story is one of the most important ones. And here you can hear Trump talking about why AI is bigger than the internet for this reason. It's not because of just the cognitive scaling that it gives people. It's not just because of that. It is because of the energy question. It's what makes the AI story bigger than the internet, and he's right. It's more like the revolution in aerospace and rocketry and flight and mechanics that happened, and computers in general, and magnetism and everything that we learned about in the 1950s. And here he is describing.
AI is a big deal. AI is going to be maybe the biggest thing, bigger than the internet, bigger than anything else. We are leading China by a lot. We are leading everybody by a lot.
Not the
They're
internet.
all building the factories here. And you know what I did for the electric? Because they need twice the electric as we currently produce for the whole country, which is crazy. Nobody can do that. So what I did is I came up with a concept. Each building that is built is going to generate their own electricity. They're going to build their own electric plant. We are building numbers of AI. And by the way, also auto plants. Everything.
Right.
We're building everything. AI is a big deal. AI is going to be.
I see in the chat we've got the Gonzo Johnny talking about using logic. You're logical, Gonzo. Good for you. Way to go. Enjoy it. What I'm talking about here is how to get people induced into buying in. How do you reprogram people's subconscious? How do you use the true persuasion which is appealing to wants and fears in order to shift and alter people's worldview. Nobody is logical. There's no such thing. No one is logical. We have something we think we call it rationality and logic, but really it is just the justifying to ourselves and explaining to ourselves our decisions. We call that rationality, but the choices are made way before that. The choices are made simply by what you want, what you're afraid of. Some of them are able to trump others. Fear can usually trump want. There are certain types of want that can trump fear based on the strength of the fear and how much it's been induced. But what you do need is this entire awareness that no one is persuaded by logic. There's no such thing. You are persuaded by having enough people want the same thing that they're aligned and starting to believe that that's reality. When people are afraid of the same thing, like Nazis, there's nothing logical about being afraid about Nazis right now. It's because of the archetypes that we used to build the World War II consensus that made Nazis the great fear. It took decades of brainwashing in order to make Nazism the absolute fundamental definition of evil, and it's a fine one for the times we lived in. But it wasn't even really, again, if you really did the math on World War II and the 20th century, Hitler, it depends. If you value, he's a bronze medalist, first of all, in overall evilness in the 20th century as measured by murder count. Stalin and Mao have to be 1 and 2. There's just no way Hitler can compete. Now, some people say Pol Pot killed way more. Now, that's only true if you value Cambodian life the same and equal as you would value American and German and French lives that were lost in World War II. Most of the world does not. You can not like that or whatever. I'll give Hitler the bronze, all right? It's very racist of me to give him the bronze. Again, if you value all human lives around the world the same, I'm sorry, the Cambodian guy gets the bronze. Hitler's not even on the podium. He's not even a medalist in 20th century killing. That's the truth. If you count all lives the same and a Jewish life is worth the same as a Cambodian life, then he's outside the medals. He's not on the podium. There's no Nazi flag going up when we're counting and tabulating 20th century kill count. It's just the truth. Now, I'm ready to be racist about this and give Hitler the bronze. I think that he deserves it. He's the bronze medalist. Now, he's a fine surrogate for the devil as well, and for evil, and for the definition of evil and the way we looked at the 20th century. He's a fine archetype for it. So there's no need to even give out medals. He was good enough in order to understand that. But as we move past this version of reality, and as we move past how we conceive of these archetypes and what evil is and what right and wrong are and what we're afraid of, we're changing the definitions. We're changing reality. And that's what Bitcoin ultimately does. It changes reality. And it changes reality in the way that we can see Trump discussing AI here. And this is why I say it's so much bigger. It's bigger because it goes back to the fundamentals. It goes back to the idea that we're not logical, but we can subtly, subconsciously reprogram wants and fears. We can subtly reprogram the archetypes of good and bad and what we aspire to and what we want to avoid and what we're afraid of being. And many good results came from fearing Nazism and not wanting to be Nazis as an orientation for our society. Unfortunately, it also led to a lot of traps, and we'll talk about the traps in a second. But here, Sightbringer talking about how these shifting psychological under the conscious level are actually being reprogrammed. So he says Trump didn't say anything new, but he anchored something important: narrative convergence. The moment a sitting president says AI is bigger than the internet, the Overton window collapses. You're no longer in the startup era of AI. You're in state level narrative alignment. And that's how the 20th century was truly dictated. That's how the stage was set. That's how the entire architecture of deceit was established. It was established through narrative, state level narrative supply chains, I call them. And once heads of state begin framing AI as civilization scale, everything's downstream: regulation, capital, infrastructure, public fear, military planning accelerates towards. Remember how he says fear here. Fear is not logical. It is subconscious. And you can cultivate this fear, not deliberately. You're supposed to be afraid of things. Your operating system is to worry about risks, and whatever you think is the biggest risk, you will actually put in your brain as an obstacle or something to avoid. You can't stop that. You can't. That's like turning off blinking or your heart beating. You can't do it. Your brain is built for knowing what stresses are, knowing what risks are, and avoiding them at all costs. So here we're at an inflection point where AI stops being a sector and becomes a sovereign priority. These structural implications, 3 structural implications below: regime lock-in. AI is now geopolitically inevitable. Every major power will treat it as critical infrastructure, not optional innovation. The policy stack will follow the military stack. 2, narrative saturation. Once AI enters presidential speech, the bubble framing dies. Retail might rotate in and out, but the long arc is now locked. It's embedded in every macro forecast from here forward. 3, the legitimacy shift. Tech power is no longer post-political. This marks the formal convergence between AI and state apparatus. Legitimacy migrates toward whichever system can wield AI coherently: governments, corporations, or sovereign protocols. When the commander-in-chief echoes what the builders said 5 years ago, it means the center has caught up. Now, that's how regimes transition, not through code, through consensus. And that's why I've been saying for a long time that the World War II consensus is over, and that that the World War II consensus is over, and that we're entering Nakamoto consensus. And Nakamoto consensus allows for at once diversity of opinion, but also the harnessing of these energetic systems. And one of my preferred frameworks that I've used many times on this show, my framework here for World War II consensus failing, which is this world's ultimate bad, the fake decentralization of these institutions as good, and these institutions now, of course, the original sin being they let communism into them. Now they've been completely saturated by communists, and anything that's not communist on the good team still gets defined as bad, which is Nazi. So the World War II consensus model breaking quickly to be replaced by Nakamoto consensus, where we see Tesla, Trump, Batman. I use that as the Peter McCormick Bitcoin Batman idea of his citadel and policing his own neighborhood in Bedford in the UK. So we're seeing this new model, this new consensus model take shape, and consensus is how these things change. The consensus model is how it changes. Now, Bitcoiners and Nakamoto consensus have the advantage of being less fault tolerant, or more fault tolerant than the World War II consensus model. The World War II consensus model is failing because it has very little fault tolerance. It can't handle much dissent. It can't handle much complaining. It can't handle many people saying, who killed Kennedy again? What is all this pizza stuff? It can't survive those things. What happened? Why is Epstein, why is everyone who knew Epstein was already a criminal still talking to him? You'll see Keir Starmer had a lot of trouble yesterday with the Lord Mendelsohn stuff. And indeed, here you see Senator Scott says live on Fox that the Bitcoin and crypto market structure bill will pass with bipartisan support, building for clarity indeed. And that is what is swapping out in the system. This is where consensus is headed. And notice that it is bipartisan. It's an important factor that it's bipartisan. It shows that it's consensus building at a time when very few other systems have consensus. Why I was involved from the very beginning in Bitcoin, the consensus went in the opposite direction as well. You could be a Bitcoiner and function, you could be a Trump supporter and function in Bitcoin from the very beginning. I have been an open Trump supporter since day one of the Trump campaign. I was a Bitcoiner first because I've been in Bitcoin longer than Trump was a public politician. But when he first came onto the scene, I have never wavered for even a minute, except for, of course, as I've said many times, his last day in office when he did not free Ross. That was a bridge too far for me. I took that quite personally at the time. But all, of course, was forgiven when he started signaling that he would do that, and in particular when he was attacked by these systems as well. So You're seeing it, right? And you can see just how untrustworthy the last system was. You can see just how corrupted it was. And that's why we have this nature abhors a vacuum and opportunity, because the proof is now becoming very clear that the old system, it can't handle the fault tolerance of what we can see in Nakamoto consensus, the corruption of it, the corruption of all of this with, Jeffrey Epstein winning the Powerball several times. Is absolutely wild. We've seen Whitey Bulger, organized crime, constantly winning lotteries. That just shows you how absolutely corrupted all of this stuff is. And indeed, why you're seeing, the debt crisis accelerating. We are dealing with what here we call the trust layer rerouting, because the fault tolerance of the old system is at its end. So here we see the end game in slow motion. The chart is the signal that sovereign foundation is shifting from control to constraint. Here's the structural read. Sovereign leverage has tipped into reflexivity. When interest on the debt consumes 20% of tax revenue, the government no longer controls the budget. The debt services itself first. That makes every dollar of future issuance more reflexive and fragile. Every new bond deepens the loop. This is why people are attacking Bitcoin today, because there is a sense and a fear amongst everyone, and an opportunity of wants and fears being completely reprogrammed. This is the monetary equivalent of a margin call, not sudden but systemic. Yield curve control is no longer optional, it's implied. If current rates hold, interest will breach 25% of revenues by the early 2030s. This is not politically survivable. It guarantees one of two outcomes. Am I getting some glitch here? Let me see if there's still glitching. Am I glitching out there? Gonzo Johnny says, if Bitcoin can be so easily attacked, why does it make for good investing? You mean manipulated? I don't know if it's that easy. The people are burning their options. You only have so many bullets that you can load in the gun, and it's way less manipulated than other form. Like gold's been heavily manipulated for. Here, I'm gonna try and. I didn't reset my computer. For some reason, there's some memory troubles, so I'm going to shut a few programs down, and that should give us what we need. And I'll erase a few of these pages as well. So that should do it. That should take some of the glitch away. Little bit of glitch. Yes, but not bad. Yeah, well, I think it's just, I left the computer on from the trip with a bunch of web pages and blah, blah, blah. So that should take it away, I think. So indeed here, fiscal sovereignty is converting into collateral scarcity. As more tax revenue goes to interest, less is left for discretionary spending. That weakens the state's ability to respond to crisis. It also means the state must roll debt, not reduce it. That transforms U.S. treasuries from risk-free to structurally fragile collateral that requires belief to function. This dynamic drives the sovereign rotation into hard assets. Gold and hard assets are reacting to the structure, not CPI. Hard assets are not rising because inflation is rising. They're rising because belief in sovereign control is eroding. This is what separation of money and state looks like. Exactly. It's not clean, it's messy, and this is what it looks like. It means the people who knew they could leverage state for control realize they can't do it anymore. They need to go to energy. And really, our pathway to separating money and state is empowering the energy industry, who's already a close to running the world as it is. They're just not going to use the state as their preferred vehicle to control the world because it doesn't really work anymore. They need something else, and that's where all of this stuff comes in. So there is no plan. The system's only tools are delay maturity, inflate nominal GDP, suppress yields below that of productivity or war resets the ratios. None of this resolves the underlying trajectory. It just prolongs the illusion. Final assessment, this chart makes the quiet end of the age of sovereign trust. The US is still dominant, but its dominance is now collateralized. Its power requires belief. That belief is being repriced by the very interest burden it created. There will be no default. There will be repression. And there will be an exodus into assets that cannot be diluted. So right now, that repression is what we're experiencing. This system is readjusting and looking for its actual canvas on which it can design its future and project its future. So we're seeing all of that before our eyes. It's just that the political body is no longer worth using. We're at the last stages of its usefulness, and we're switching to something else. And what is it? Well, here you can see one name not in the Epstein files that's very interesting, of course, is Bezos. Bezos, I think, you see him here meeting with Hegseth yesterday, and I think what you're going to see with that going forward is indeed probably, if I'm right, you're going to see, here's a prediction, you are going to see Amazon or Facebook or one of these other companies ordered to colonize Greenland, to go bring the nuclear reactor with the military and start creating these data centers up there. Just a second. One moment. My kids are trying to show me the toys that I brought back for them. They're all excited, I think. There you go. So when you see Bezos connecting with the administration like this on the same day that he's released all of these Washington Post people. So here's the old system, Lizzie Johnson. So go back to this idea of trust and what's going on with these participants, right? Here's from Bloomberg. Reporter Lizzie Johnson, Washington Post, she spent the night in a running car for heat in Kiev. She found out she was fired today while in the car. Wake up, folks. Pitching a proxy war days are over. You have to do real reporting. The Ukrainian corruption stories are everywhere, and you refuse to report on them. War pig apologist journalism is over. And I think that's exactly it. I think you see Bezos in the same day that he's meeting with the administration, the same day that he's making plans, and I believe will be putting his resources towards places like Greenland and these energetic systems. Again, I'm about 2 years late. I think I said at the end of 2023, going into 2024, that Bezos would become a Bitcoiner in 2024. I think this is the year I think you're going to see it, especially when it comes to these energy systems. Now, Lizzie Johnson here will probably be still crying by then because she's not going to get to do any more puff pieces on any of the Ukrainian politicians. So things indeed changing very for these types. And you gotta love it. I'm just getting rid of some more of these pages so the glitching hopefully stops. I might have to reset my computer at a certain point. But anyway, we're almost out of time here. So there's old Lizzie, not working out for her. And the other ways it's not working out is you have to produce things. Like Lizzie, she had to do journalism. But this is why I don't think you have to worry at all about someone like Gavin Newsom, right? Just like I said, wants and fears. You can't paper these over forever. You can't use more rhetoric. You can't use more speeches. That's quickly losing influence. It's losing persuasion. He's up here trying to say high-speed rail means no TSA, no removing your shoes, right? Of course, they would be TSA if there was one bomb attack. So this is completely crazy and stupid. Here, Jarvis says, in 2028, they told us that it couldn't be done, but refused to listen. And wouldn't you know it, 20 years and 100 billion US trash tokens later, bam, we're almost ready to start laying track. Obviously insane and won't work. Too much failure. You know, you've got Carney here blaming the other political party, right? Mark Carney, we've governed the country for the past 10 years. The reason our GDP was stalled and the Canadian dollar is weak is because of the Conservatives. None of this works. It works on Canadians because they're the best people in the world. But not much else, right? So here's indeed the system that we are headed to. And this is the real fight: prosperity at home, prestige abroad. This is the American system versus the divide and conquer British system. Will Tanner. So many of the guys Cerno is describing doesn't seem to understand that they have two choices. This is a note from Cerno, which tech/VC don't understand. There's a lot of bad blood. MAGA was censored and left to die. The only reason, in my view, Silicon Valley changed was because of fear of a wealth tax. He's correct. He is correct. But it doesn't matter. Fear and want is the only operating system we need. And that is what is changing people's minds. It is fear. The only reason, in my view, that Silicon Valley changed, it's true. Now, I'll disagree with Cerno because there's no other way to change people's minds. This is how people change their minds. Whether you like it or not, no one's logical. It's not logic that was going to bring them to any of this. And we do have these two choices: the McKinley-style national capitalism, which helps normal Americans build good lives for themselves by focusing on national investment, or Mamdani-style race communism. The frustration many have with the present system, it seems designed primarily to make their lives worse and squeeze them more in the name of short-term profits that destroy the national wealth in society generally over the long term. That is to say, we've adopted the British system of deleterious cosmopolitan financialism and have rejected the old national system of political economy that built America. From Hamilton and the Federalists to Henry Clay and the American system, to more explicit adoption of List's philosophy later on. That shift has been hugely deleterious for most people, and the frustration surrounding it isn't going away. So it can be taken into account and used to spur new American system. That's exactly what I'm saying. It is the failure of the old system and the frustrations that it produced. That's not logical. People just want to live in a certain way, and if they can't, they know what to be afraid of. They know what to avoid, and that's why we find ourselves in this situation. It can be ignored until everywhere is ruled by some horrid Mamdani type. The further would be far more preferable. And I think that's what we're getting. You can see it everywhere, right? You're seeing here another prediction. Again, I believe you're going to see the bridge to Alaska built by the Americans using the money that was taken from Putin for the Ukrainian war sanctions. I think you're going to see it put to work over in this part of the world. Trump administration, these areas of cooperation with Russia. Meanwhile, we disagree with Russia on a lot, but we may agree. And so when people say, well, you can't work with Putin or anything because you disagree with Ukraine invasion, well, the president said very clearly, Putin would not have invaded Ukraine. We're going to try and work and bring that to an end. And there may be some areas of cooperation too. I think those areas of cooperation are going to include the physical connection of Russia and America. Remember, the scariest thing for these British banking system is Russia and America working together. That's been the major thing they've tried to keep from happening for decades now, and what we should see going forward. And all of this moral high ground stuff isn't going to work either. Here's Joe Rogan with a few words on it.
Authoritarianism, it snuck in through a sheep costume.
Yeah,
you know,
a wolf in a sheep's costume.
Yeah, it was a costume of being more inclusive, being more open-minded, being a better society, being kinder. You know, it led to, you know, child trans surgeries. It led to chaos. It led to like a lot of like really fucking freaky things that you'd never expected. People saying that the First Amendment's not important. What's more important is protecting people. Like,
well, that was the key, wasn't it? The point was that the way it worked was that it was gulling people through language that sounded really sweet and kittenish and fluffy. You know, things like equity. Well, that sounds a lot like equality, doesn't it?
Right.
But it doesn't mean equality. It means treating people unequally to ensure equal outcomes according to group identity. That's a very different thing. You say you're talking about, let's make everything inclusive. But what you really mean is let's exclude anyone who disagrees with what we've got to say.
Right.
So you're using language to mean the exact opposite. They say gender-affirming care. Do they mean that? Or do they mean affirming what is effectively a pseudoscientific belief among vulnerable people? So it's all about misusing language, because most people, I think, are pretty decent.
Yeah.
Most people want to be kind and want to be fair. And when you hear
Oh, I got Hank. 1 second. There we go. All right, folks. We'll catch up with all this stuff later. I got to bring Hank in and say hello. I haven't seen him in a long time. Hold on a second here, Hank. Hold on a second. Let me stop sharing. And there we go, Hank. Hey, you know, glasses. What's going on?
I don't wear them during the show. They reflect too much light, but I need them.
You need them.
How are you, man? Long time no see. How you been?
Yeah, man, I love life, man. I got back late last night, so trying to keep myself a little bit awake here and doing my best. Some jet lag on the other end. But so far, so good, man. We had a fun time this morning. My computer is lagging, so I might be a little late joining your show. I've got to do some resets here because something's wrong with the processor or something.
Yeah.
But other than that, we did some Epstein files chatting, some of the minerals and vault stuff chat. We talked about the Washington Post firings, perhaps being related to the Bezos meeting with Hexit the other day. And in fact, well, probably not directly related, but my prediction that I made today is you're going to see Bezos building in Greenland and a Bitcoiner. I've made this prediction for 2 years, but I think we're on the cusp.
Okay. Amazon shipping center coming to a Greenland city near you. That's exciting.
Greenland. if you need same day shipping up in Greenland, you're going to get some Amazon business.
Yeah, it's right through those Arctic pathways or whatever that everyone's all up in arms about. Well, we're excited to have you on the show today, Nolan. We got a lot to talk about. We will be talking about the Washington Post, what's going on with Zelensky in Ukraine, Iran. Obviously, the Bitcoin price has been tumbling. Everybody is freaking out. So we're going to be looking for some answers, and you might be the guy I'm calling to, Nolan, to make some sense of all this. So we'll see you in a couple minutes. I'll let you finish up on your show, but we'll see you on Roxham TV News starting just a couple.
Awesome, Hank. See you soon, my man.
See ya.
Take
Bye.
it easy.
Bye.
All right, team. I'm going to be cutting the feed in a minute here, and I will be putting on the logo. And after the logo, you're going to see the thanks for watching, but I just want to say thanks for watching. There you go, everyone. We're going to be coming at you tomorrow. I thought we were at war with Greenland, LS Beyond Normal. Well, we own Greenland. Why would we be at war? Doesn't matter. There we go. There we go. Let's see. Okay, everyone. Thanks, Nolan. Good times. Are you just not huge Trump fans? I mean, are you not just huge Trump fans of a politician? Gonzo Johnny, I think you might be having a mental breakdown, so you're going to get blocked because you're annoying, and I don't really want to, I don't talk to retards in general. I don't really care about what retards have to say. So, Johnny, sorry, man. We tried our best to give you some time and attention, but you can actually fuck off. See ya. Okay, everyone. I hope you all have a great day. I shall see you tomorrow. Yeah, can't handle the truth and facts. Exactly. Yeah. The truth is so hard for us here. Yes. All right, folks. I hope you all have a great day. I shall see you all tomorrow. And must be running a Mac. Of course, I'm running a Mac. What do you think? There you go. What could have been a beautiful friendship? Yeah, well, I don't really care. And we got plenty of viewers. We don't need folks like him. Yeah, ready for the transition. All right, everyone. You're going to see the thanks for watching screen come up. Thanks for watching. Peace.